everybody. Um, I am going to read you a little bit of my new book. I'm going to read you just a couple of sections. Um, uh, and I hope you love it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you want to talk about it. So you probably know by now, the book is called Using Schema Play Theory to Advocate for Free Play in Early Childhood. If you haven't pre-ordered it, you can do that from Teachers College Press, tcpress.com, or Amazon or Barnes and Noble or bookshop.org. However you want to order it, it's available and it's out there. Right now, the publication date is November 21st, but I've had some folks tell me that if they get a lot of pre-orders, it might come out earlier. And I did have an email from my publisher asking for a list of college professors who might want to use the book because they want to do a fall adoption push. So that tells me that maybe it might be available a little bit earlier if they're looking at the fall college semester. So yay, it's so exciting. I wish I had a real copy of it to hold and read to you from, but I don't. So I'm going to read to you from this PDF that I had printed and bound so I could pretend I have the real book. So the first piece I want to read to you is from the first chapter, where I am really, the chapter is called What is Schema Play Theory? This is from later in the chapter, where I'm talking specifically about using schema play theory to advocate for free play. So here I go. The goal of this book is not only to introduce readers to the theory of play schemas, but also to discuss the ways that an understanding of the theory can help play advocates to articulate the value of free play. Chapter 2 examines the benefits of play for young children, the risks of play deprivation, and barriers to free play pedagogy in early childhood settings. Following chapters will discuss each of the schemas introduced above in greater depth, discussing the value of each experience to values held by potential skeptics in an effort to overcome those risks and barriers. My work with schema play theory centers on the idea that if free play advocates hope to create change and to expand access to free play in early childhood, we have to understand how to specifically connect with the audience we want to persuade and to tailor our message to their priorities. When I speak on this idea at conferences, I use the following framework of crowds to organize the target audiences. The first crowd is the neuroscience crowd. In this group, we have folks who are very excited about the many ways we are now able to demonstrate the importance of the early years for brain growth and development because it validates our work with children birth to age 5. See, we're real professionals. We work with children during their most important brain development years. But uh-oh, did it change the way we plan for children and manage classrooms and expectations? Not as much as it should have. In fact, using the language of brain development without a deeper look into the ways the brain develops in these years often contributes to or supports existing elements of the academic pushdown. The discussion of the benefits of free play in Chapter 2 will explore this phenomenon further. The second crowd, the SEL crowd. SEL, or social emotional learning, has two buzzword claims to fame. First, in conversations where SEL is used euphemistically to discuss challenging behavior instead of being recognized as a valid and complex element of human development. SEL is commodified as a behavior management tool, a remedy to the inconvenience children or teachers experience when children are not easy to understand. Its second claim to fame is as part of a moral panic from groups who fear and resist human diversity. Social emotional learning is seen as woke indoctrination. As I elaborate in later chapters when discussing play scenarios, there's a deeper way of thinking about what social and emotional development really is, how important it is to all children, and how it is supported in play. The third crowd is the parent crowd. I got to know this crowd very, very well in my time as a child care center director. It seemed like every day I would get at least one phone call from a parent or guardian asking, so do children learn things or do they just play? I still have a visceral reaction to this kind of question. Thank goodness that Katrina Makasayat and I crossed paths through her work with 0 to 3 several years ago. She offered me an alternate perspective. These parents are advocating for their children's educational success with the information they've been given. With so much marketing, so many parent groups, and yes, so many early childhood programs, telling them that every experience must be educational, and the way educational is defined is early academics, of course they will see play as less of a priority. I'm convinced that families are the key to changing this discourse. I dream of the day that a mom calls a child care center and asks, do children get to play there, or are they forced to do school things too early? Schema play theory is a great tool to help shift their thinking. They know their children better than anyone. And when we name what looks random, as exploration of a play schema, they start to see more of and they become more curious about the play. One of my favorite play advocacy moments in the last several years was a coworker texting me a photo of her toddler's plastic hot dog toy sitting on the toilet lid and asking me, is this a schema? Number 4 is the playing teacher crowd. It's difficult to sell a free play pedagogy or even a defense of more play in early childhood settings to practitioners who wonder, if they just play all day, how am I a teacher? What do I do with my expertise and my skill? How does learning happen if I'm not in charge? In this crowd, we see people working with children birth to 5 in ways that look like elementary school. The teacher leading everything and making every decision, the whole group of children moving through the day as a unit, and with any nonconformity seen as a loss of teacher control. They worry that free play would encourage more misbehavior and make it impossible to ensure that goals and standards are addressed systematically. They often talk about how much they loved playing teacher as a child and have taken that memory as a sign that they were called to teach. To which I ask, what if you just really loved dramatic play and that was a familiar context for you to reenact? Is this too harsh? When I consider how this mentality and practice contributes to play deprivation, I don't think so. In 1999, Jacobs and Eskridge wrote that even after receiving training in developmentally appropriate practice, adults regularly use their school memories in their work with children instead of that training. My decades of experience working with a variety of practitioners in a variety of settings has shown me this is true. If I want to advocate for more play in these programs, I need to make the case that you can still be an expert, a professional, and a real teacher if children play. And the last crowd, make sure before I promise that. Yep, the last crowd is the STEM crowd. The STEM crowd is closely related to the playing teacher crowd in its focus on attempting to assign tangible academic value to young children's experiences. It's right there in the name: science, technology, engineering, and math. Adults have to be in charge of the experience with their learning standards in hand if they're going to support this kind of learning, right? You might be surprised. Every foundational skill for what is labeled STEM is deeply practiced and supported when children play. The discussion of play scenarios throughout the rest of this book will highlight how free play pedagogy is STEM teaching. Now, while I looked for the next section I wanted to read you, I'll tell you that when my friend Bethany Corey, who some of you know, read the draft for me, she made a joke that it should be a drinking game for every time I use the word pedagogy. So I have to giggle a little bit whenever I read it now. So the schema-specific chapters start with a bullet list of kinds of play that fit that schema, a definition of the schema, and then each of those schema chapters has 2 real stories from my real work with young children. And then, so I tell the story, And then to kind of connect the story with those crowds, I talk about the social value, the emotional value, the math literacy and science value, and the brain development value that that play might be holding for that child. And so I'm going to give you not the full thing. I'm going to give you the story and then the math, science, and literacy piece from chapter 3, the transforming schema. So I want to show you their faces while I read this story to you, if I can get it to share. All right, so I hope you can see that. Um, I have issues sharing photos sometimes, and if not, you'll see it at some point, I'm sure. So this is Kate and Miguel. Here's their story. The large plastic bowls from yesterday's Play-Doh making activity are drying on the countertop next to the children's hand washing sink. Kate, 5 years old, picks up the largest bowl and starts to talk to 4-year-old Miguel, recalling the mixing they had done together the day before. She says, "Let's mix new stuff." And they each take a bowl to the table in the science area. Miguel goes to the water table and brings back 2 measuring cups, which they both use to bring water from the sink to their bowl. Kate turns to the science shelf and finds cotton balls, straws, popsicle sticks. She and Miguel both add these items to their water and stir. Kate says, "Ew, the cotton is gooey now." Miguel says, "Tear it like this," and shows her how he breaks his cotton balls into smaller pieces before he adds them to the water. Miguel asks his teacher if he can put some paint in his mixture. She nods and he goes to the art area and carries a gallon jug of red paint back, using the nozzle to add several squirts to his mixture. Kate watches him as his water and the cotton balls change colors. She walks to the art area and comes back with the markers. She takes the lid off of the blue marker and dips it into the water. She sees a small amount of blue spread into the water. She says, "I want a lot more of blue in my mix." She drops the whole marker into the water. Together, they watch the blue spread from the marker out into the water. Miguel walks over to Gia, who's playing on the other side of the room, and says, "We did red and blue in our mixes." Um, uh, I'm good. Like I said, I'm going to read now the kind of school readiness section of what might be coming from this. But I also have to tell you that it took a lot of effort for me to add this story to the book, knowing I'd have to talk about it a lot because I hate touching, hearing, thinking about cotton balls, especially if someone's pulling them apart. Like reading that just made my skin crawl. But that didn't stop me from letting them try their ideas. And I got this great story out of it and this great photo. These children are both, I think, going into 5th grade now, so it's really bizarre. But here's some more from the chapter. And again, this is from the school readiness section of discussion. So for their math development, I wrote, "It's easy for those of us who work with young children to feel most comfortable with math that primarily involves number recognition and vocabulary. Thinking and planning in terms of arithmetic only comes more naturally to us. However, in Kate and Miguel's transforming play, we see the broader scope of mathematics, or the theoretical aspects of this area of learning. When Miguel hears Kate's cotton ball problem, submerging the whole cotton ball in the water felt gooey and was unpleasant, he makes a prediction that pulling the cotton ball into smaller pieces might lead to a different result. His experience of decomposing the cotton ball gave him data that Kate could use in her own investigation. When Miguel wanted to transform his water from clear to having a color, he made a plan to try adding paint. Kate saw the transformation that occurred and wanted to replicate it. Her plan was to get her own paint from the art area, but when she saw the markers, she saw other possibilities and developed her own prediction to test. Kate compared the way dipping the marker into her water led to results that were different from Miguel's paint transformation. She wanted a more dramatic color change like she had seen in Miguel's water. She drew the conclusion that she had not added enough color by just dipping the marker in the water. Her plan was then to add the whole marker. This allowed her to establish the fact that using the marker, either a little bit or a lot, still did not lead to the full color change she was trying to achieve. When reframed through the transforming schema play model, what looked to some adults like simply messy play, wasteful practice, or incorrect use of materials can be understood as deeply engaging mathematical theory and practice. And then here's the literacy section. This transforming exploration may not seem like a literacy experience because of our tendency to assume that literacy is mostly about letter recognition and sound production, and therefore must be planned and led by an adult. However, Kate's and Miguel's experience is certainly contributing to their language and literacy development and is providing vital foundational support for letter recognition and sound production. Kate is motivated to engage in conversation with Miguel, listening to his ideas rather than just instructing him on his role in the play. Miguel is motivated to share his ideas with Kate because he feels safe in the shared play experience. In their book, Shifting the Balance, 6 Ways to Bring the Science of Reading into a Balanced Literacy Classroom, Berkins and Yates suggest that routines for building speaking and listening skills are easily woven across the entire learning day. These instructional strategies do not require fancy materials, specialized training, or big changes. They simply require a commitment to be intentional about bringing the classroom alive with spoken language and conversation. Kate and Miguel's transforming exploration reminds us that protecting free play is part of an intentional routine that invites spoken language and rich conversation, not just with adults, but with their peers. And then science. In the beginning of this interaction, Kate used prior experience to raise questions about other ways to use the mixing bowls. She raised more questions about the materials on the science shelf, as is evidenced by her experiments. When she expressed her discomfort with the cotton balls, Miguel wondered how he might help her. This question led to his suggestion that she change the way she used the materials to solve her problem. More questions were raised for Kate when she walked to get paint and wondered instead if the markers would help her achieve her desired effect. This process of wondering, of raising questions about the ways materials can be used and altered to achieve a goal, is a necessary skill for scientific experimentation. If I had inserted myself and stopped any of these steps, telling Kate and Miguel, that's not how you use these materials, I would have reinforced the idea that there is only one correct way to use materials, and I would have suppressed this important STEM skill. So like I said, those schema chapters include social, emotional, math, literacy, science, brain development, and then a few paragraphs of further discussion, just other ideas or things that came to me as I reflected on and really deeply looked at and thought about these children's stories. There's 2 of these stories and 2 of those discussions in every chapter. I am super excited that it's going to be out in the world. So I hope that you enjoyed hearing that reading, and I just am so grateful for your support for everything that we're doing with that early childhood nerd, and now with the book. So thank you so much.